My phone rang once again, and like every time, it was my mother. This was the fifth time she had called me today, asking about my arrival time. Her voice had a mix of excitement and urgency that I couldn't quite understand. I was returning home after a long time. My office had granted me a 1-month holiday, and I was traveling by train back to my hometown. It was 6 o'clock in the evening, and my train was scheduled to arrive at the station by 8. While sitting by the window, watching the trees and fields pass by, I kept wondering why my mother was so excited about my arrival. Of course, she had missed me, but there was something different about her tone, something unusual. As soon as I reached the station, I got into a cab and headed home. The moment I rang the doorbell, the door flung open and there stood my mother, tears of joy brimming in her eyes. "Oh, my dear Daniel, you're finally home," she said, wrapping me in a warm hug. I smiled and held her tight. "I missed you too, Mom." We went to the living room, and I sat down on the sofa, exhausted from my journey. "Mom, please get me a glass of water," I said, leaning back. She didn't move. Instead, she sat beside me with a strange smile. "Your water is coming," she said. A few moments later, a young woman, about 22 years old, entered the room carrying a glass of water. She looked nervous and hesitant, her hands slightly trembling as she handed me the glass. "Thank you," I said politely. My mother's eyes gleamed as she looked at her. Then she turned to me and said, "Daniel, meet Evelyn, our new house helper." "Oh, okay. Welcome, Evelyn." I smiled at her. "Thank you, sir," she replied shyly. But before I could say anything more, my mother interrupted. "Oh, no, no. Don't call him sir. Just call him Daniel, and I'll be very happy." "Yes, please call me Daniel," I added with a friendly smile. We had dinner together, though Evelyn mostly stayed in the kitchen, doing her work. Later, while whispering, my mother told me, "Evelyn is going to stay with us. She lost her parents last week, and she has no one left. They were living on rent, and now she doesn't even have a place to stay. I decided to help her." "That's very kind of you, Mom," I said. "But are you sure about this? You know how the world is these days. Having a complete stranger in our home." "She is not a stranger." My mother cut me off. I knew her parents well. I didn't argue further. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of my favorite breakfast. When I reached the table, my mother was already sitting there, and Evelyn was standing nearby, looking hesitant. "Come, Evelyn, join us," my mother said warmly. "Yes, please," I added. She sat beside me hesitantly. That was the first time I really looked at her. She had deep blue eyes, just like mine. For some reason, I felt a strange connection with her. Later that day, my mother asked me for a favor. "Daniel, I'm too tired to go to the market. Can you take Evelyn and help her buy some clothes?" I hesitated. Sure, I guess." My mother's eyes twinkled. "Lovely. You two can spend time together." I found that comment odd. At the market, Evelyn picked out some dresses while I helped her choose. As we talked, I realized we had so many similarities. We even liked the same colors. After shopping, we went to a coffee shop, and for the first time, she truly opened up to me. She told me about her life, her struggles, her dreams. I told her about mine. When we returned home, my mother was unusually happy. "Did you two have fun?" she asked. It was an innocent question, but something about it made me suspicious. The next night, as we sat on the terrace, Evelyn and I laughed and talked. The moonlight made her look even more beautiful. Without thinking, I held her hand. She didn't pull away. She smiled. That night, I lay in bed, unable to sleep. I knew it now. I had fallen in love with Evelyn. The next day, I secretly bought a ring. I decorated the backyard with lights and flowers. That night, I let Evelyn outside and, kneeling before her, proposed. Tears welled in her eyes. Yes, yes, Daniel. At that moment, my mother walked in. She saw the ring, saw Evelyn, and screamed, "What is all this? What are you doing, Daniel?" I laughed. "Mom, I'm proposing to Evelyn. Isn't this what you wanted?" My mother's face turned pale. "No, you can't marry her. Are you both out of your senses?" Before I could ask why, she fainted. The doctor later said she had suffered a panic attack and must avoid stress. When she regained consciousness, I asked her why she had reacted that way. "Daniel, I never wanted you to marry Evelyn," she said weakly. "Forget all your feelings for her." "Why, Mom? You liked her so much. Can't you see how much I love her?" Tears filled her eyes, but she said nothing. The next day, I came home to find guests in the house. A young woman sat beside my mother. "Daniel," my mother said, "meet Olivia. She is my friend's daughter. I have chosen her as my daughter-in-law." I was furious. "What? No. I love Evelyn, but you can't marry her," my mother said firmly. "Why? Give me a reason." Tears streamed down her face. "I can't. If you want to know the truth, wait for my death." Angry, I shouted, "Then die, Mom." I regretted those words instantly. Months passed, and my mother arranged Evelyn's marriage with someone else. Evelyn, seeing my mother's condition, agreed and left. My mother became weaker every day. Soon, she passed away. The day after her death, I found a letter in her room. "Daniel, I know you hate me, but I had to do this. The truth would have made you hate me even more. You and Evelyn, you are siblings. I adopted you when you were a baby. Evelyn is my real daughter. I never wanted you to love her as a woman. I wanted you to love her as a sister. Please forgive me, my son. I love you with all my heart." My hands trembled. My vision blurred. My heart shattered. What had I done? Now I had no mother, no sister, and no love. What was my mistake? What was my mother's mistake? Can anyone tell me?